On May 20th, 2025, Benjamin Donnie Richie was executed by lethal injection at Indiana State Prison in Michigan City, Indiana. He had spent 23 years on death row, awaiting judgment for a crime that shook an entire community to its core. It was just before dusk, September 29, 2000, when hell arrived in Beech Grove, Indiana. A white van, reported stolen just hours earlier from a local gas station, was spotted weaving through traffic. Officer Matthew Hickey made the call. Inside the van, 3 men. 2 more units joined the silent pursuit. Officer Robert Mercury and Officer William Bill Toney, a beloved 31-year-old officer with a wife and 2 daughters at home. As the van rolled deeper into the neighborhood, something snapped. The vehicle veered off-road, plowing through a quiet suburban yard before slamming to a stop. Doors flew open. 2 men bolted. Officer Toney locked eyes on the driver, Benjamin Donnie Richie, 20 years old, and gave chase. It was a sprint through the heart of American suburbia. Fences crashed underfoot. Dogs barked wildly. Porch lights snapped on, one after another, like falling dominoes. Richie vaulted a chain-link fence. Toney followed, relentless, adrenaline pushing him forward. Then, in the darkness, at the edge of a wooden gate, Richie turned. He pulled a 9mm Glock from his waistband. 5 shots rang out. 4 struck Officer Toney's bulletproof vest or missed entirely. But 1 bullet found the soft target just above the vest, slicing into his upper chest. He stumbled, tried to raise his weapon, fired once, then collapsed.
My crime is shooting a police officer and killing him. And it started off, pretty harmless as a theft crime. Me and my friends would ride around and carjack people and take their rims from their cars from them.
Neighbors heard his gasps, the last struggling breaths of a man dying under the same sky he had sworn to protect. The city mourned. More than 1,000 people packed the church for Bill Toney's funeral. His fellow officers carried his flag-draped coffin in silence. Outside, patrol cars lined the street, their red and blue lights flashing dimly under a gray Indiana sky. His wife, Toni Horan, stood beside their daughters. The weight of loss was written all over her face. She later said that when Bill finally became a Beech Grove officer, their life had come together. Life was just good, she told reporters. Things were going well. And just like that, gone. He left behind a wife, 2 daughters, a badge still warm with sweat. As sirens screamed through the neighborhood, Richie vanished into the night. He tossed the Glock and, strangely, a wig into a patch of brush. Why he had it, no one ever figured out. Disguise? Paranoia? Panic? The manhunt was immediate and massive. Over 100 officers, SWAT teams, K-9 units, helicopters, and roadblocks. The city barely slept. Then an anonymous tip. Ritchie was holed up at a friend's house. When officers stormed the location, they expected a standoff. A shootout. Something bloody. Instead, Benjamin Donnie Richie raised his hands. Quietly, almost casually.
The next thing I know, I wake up and hear my buddy says they're outside. I wake up and it was like in the movies, you see a whole bunch of red dots from their guns going in and out the windows. And I was like, yeah, it's bad, man.
In court, the air was thick with rage. Witnesses in the chamber, including Ritchie's defense attorney, Steve Schuta, watched in tense silence as the execution began. Just minutes after the blinds to the witness room were raised, Ritchie's body jolted. He violently lifted his head and shoulders from the gurney and twitched for about 3 seconds, his final disturbing movement. The atmosphere in the execution chamber was somber and thick with emotion. For many, this was not just the end of a criminal case, it was the end of a nightmare. Among the witnesses sat the family of fallen Beech Grove police officer Bill Toney, the man Ritchie had murdered. Officer Toney's widow, Deidre "Dee Dee" Toney, sat just feet away from her husband's killer. Her hands were clenched white as she listened to the chilling details of Ritchie's final moments. She remembered the courtroom, The way Ritchie had laughed and rolled his eyes, mocking her pain. She had finally snapped. She called him what he was, a coward. He locked eyes with her, and in a final show of contempt, he spat back, "Bitch?"
I was trying to portray a tough guy in court, so when they gave me the death sentence, I laughed at them. And the prosecutor told everybody that's the voice of evil. Which I would agree at the time, yeah. You know, I deserved the death penalty. I was young and didn't care about anybody at all but myself.
The prosecution had left no room for doubt. Benjamin Ritchie wasn't some misguided youth. He was cold, calculated, a killer. And then came the image that silenced the courtroom. Tattooed across Ritchie's neck was a number, 37, Officer Tony's badge number, a sick, permanent trophy of the life he took. For Officer Tony's family, this was never about vengeance. It was about closure, about ending the haunting chapter that had begun the day he was murdered. And despite Ritchie never showing remorse or offering an apology, they were there to witness the end of it all. The jury took 3 hours and gave their final verdict: death with no possibility of parole. In the final months, Benjamin changed. Or maybe finally, he revealed something he'd buried. He described the night of Tony's murder as a train that left the station with no brakes. He also told,
I thought maybe if I, take my gun out and fire it a couple times, it'd scare him because, he's a Beech Grove police officer. It's kind of a good neighborhood. Like, how many times has he been shot at, if that bullet would have hit.
He begged for clemency. None came. Some still saw the lost boy. Others only saw the man who gunned down a cop.
Governor Braun will allow the execution of Benjamin Ritchie to proceed. Ritchie was convicted of killing a Beech Grove police officer. Now, Ritchie's execution is scheduled for May 20th. Braun's decision comes after the state's parole board rejected Ritchie's clemency plea earlier today. Advocates for Ritchie argue that his fetal alcohol spectrum disorder diagnosis should disqualify him from capital punishment.
But none of it was enough to save him from the consequences of his actions. His final day was eerily calm. He declined a spiritual advisor. He ate his last meal from Olive Garden, chicken parmigiana, lasagna, fettuccine alfredo, his final wish. At 12:41 a.m., he was led into the execution chamber. The room was stark. Fluorescent lights buzzed over the gurney where Benjamin Ritchie lay. It felt more like an operating room than a place of death. Behind glass, the viewing room sat silent. When the curtain lifted, the quiet hit hard, just the hum of vents and the shuffle of feet. Ritchie was allowed 5 witnesses. His attorney, Steve Schutta, stood among them, unable to see his client's face. Also watching were the family of Officer Bill Toney. Now they stood witness as justice exhaled its final breath. Benjamin Donnie Richie lay still, his arms strapped down, the IV already taped to his vein. His chest rose slowly. Calm, not a flicker of panic. Barely audible through the glass, he spoke. "I love my family, my friends, and all the support I've gotten. I hope they all find peace." Shortly after the process began, Ritchie's body jolted. He lifted his head and shoulders off the gurney violently. Then, just as suddenly, he fell still. Time of death, 12:46 a.m. Was justice truly served that night in the execution chamber? Or does a life, no matter how broken or brutal, deserve a second chance? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below.